All right, good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin with today's announcement, let me say a few words about the ongoing surge in violence that we've been experiencing. This past Thursday, as we headed into the July 4th weekend, myself and others outlined our all-hands-on-deck public safety strategy. And many people around the city really rose to the occasion. And I saw this firsthand, from Superintendent Brown and his leadership team to the entire Chicago Police Department, to our street outreach groups, our faith leaders, and many other community organizations and residents who spent this last 4 days doing everything that they could to keep our neighborhoods and our children safe. Their work is making a difference in the lives of families and neighborhoods, and they should be commended for the sacrifices and efforts they make every single day of the year. And yet, even with everything they did and all the sacrifices they made, we still saw a 4-day weekend of 87 Chicagoans shot, 17 Chicagoans killed, and 2 of them children. Our children. And I say our children because I want all of us to feel this loss. It feels personal to me. Thoughts and prayers are simply not enough at this point. Sorrow itself is not enough. And what it says is we need to do better as a city. This day, this year, and really every day. There's no reason we should be feeling and experiencing moments like this. And I want to talk to those Chicagoans, mostly the young men out there with illegal firearms. For those of you who were given a choice and chose not to pull the trigger, who chose life, who chose humanity, who chose to do the right thing in this moment, we want to say thank you on behalf of your family, your community, your neighbors, for doing what you knew in your heart was the right thing, which is to place the sanctity of life above petty grievances or disputes. And to the others who shot indiscriminately into crowds, seemingly without care or concern for those who hurt or killed. I sincerely pray on behalf of a grieving city that you are able to recognize the consequences of what you've done, the souls you have ruptured. And I pray that you find the purpose and the spirit that is obviously lacking in your lives. As painful as this weekend was, and it was tragic, unfortunately it was not unique. But I refuse to allow us to normalize these circumstances, to normalize this gun violence, to normalize the anguish that we feel. I'd said before, and I think it's true, we simply must fundamentally recommit ourselves to focusing on the root causes of the violence. It is every bit a public health crisis as COVID-19, and we can never lose sight of that fact. And through that public health lens, we must challenge ourselves to do better. Through investments in social services, trauma supports, jobs, and so much more. Through the hard but essential work of building authentic relationships between the men and women of the police department and the communities that they serve every day. That partnership is critical to stemming this tide of violence. We also need to continue building up partnerships with our law enforcement community at all levels, local, county, state, and federal. There's work to be done, and we all need to be committed. In particular, let me call out one aspect that I think speaks to this moment. We need more effort and resources devoted to the illegal gun trade. We cannot simply accept that illegal guns flooding our streets is normal, because it's not. And we should not accept this as a given. It need not be, and it must not be. And yes, we must hold violent criminals accountable. Now, let me be clear. No one thinks that we should go back to the days where Cook County Jail was in effect a debtor's prison, where people charged with nonviolent crimes were locked up simply because they were poor, and because neither they or their loved ones could scrape together the cash to bail them out. We need to put those dark days behind us in the past. But in this moment, when we think about violent criminals, those who have demonstrated that they are, in fact, a danger to the community, those who continue to wreak havoc and cause our elders and our children to fear warm summer days, yes, they need to be locked up. And as leaders and elected officials, we must put aside the politics and come together in collaboration for the good of our residents, who we all swore to protect. I want to disrupt the pipeline that sees too many of our young boys become men raised by the streets. For black and brown young men, their career path cannot just be the corner instead of college or careers. Now, this is long, hard work, and unfortunately, we are seeing the manifestations of decades of neglect play out in violence every day, every week, and every deadly weekend. So what must be done? Fundamentally, we have to do a better job of loving our children and providing them an alternative to a life that too many of them have fallen prey to. I started my day today visiting a Park District day camp. I watched with great joy the children who are queued up to go inside with their parents. A little bit anxious, a little nervous. They were nervous about what would happen that day and meeting new people and leaving their parents. But neither they nor their parents were worried that a gunman would come and claim their young lives. That freedom to just be, to dream and to play, all of our children should live in that bliss that a beautiful summer day brings. As I said on Thursday, I want to eliminate entirely the pipeline of young men to our streets and create a pipeline instead to legitimate economy and a life of meaning and purpose. As painful as these past weekends have been, and they have been extraordinarily painful, what gives me hope and determination is what I saw and spoke about earlier. The overwhelming goodness in all of our communities, everywhere. The passion and sacrifice in our neighbors, our street outreach workers, our faith leaders, our community organizations, our police, and everyday residents who step up to protect their neighborhoods and claim the territory under their feet. Over the past 3 days, I saw police officers at roll calls who dedicated their weekends to protecting their neighbors. I joined street outreach workers as they walked the blocks of Garfield Park to ensure residents could safely celebrate the holiday, and target area outreach workers who partnered with Team Inglewood to do the same thing on the south side. Good people stretching themselves, all in an effort to bring peace and comfort to our neighbors. I joined community leaders like Alita Clark in Inglewood, who organized a food drive to provide meals, PPE kits, and other goods to residents. This and these examples are who we are as a city. That's the good we'll be building on, because that's the good that will shatter once and for all the desperation and the absence that feeds our gun violence epidemic. And it replaces it with the support of hope and meaning and excitement that will create the healthy and meaningful communities that we all want to see. It's that same mission that brings us here now for today's announcement. I want to first thank our city's Comptroller, Reshma Soni, for being here. I want to recognize our Water Commissioner also for being here, Randy Connor. Thank you. I also want to give a very special thanks to Harold Rice, the CEO of the Community and Economic Development Association, or CEDA, as well as Lourdes Rivera, one of our CEDA's intake volunteers. Thank you both for being here. Today's announcement would not have been possible without CEDA's incredible leadership and partnership and collaboration. And this is a special announcement for our communities and for our families, and our mission to put our residents on solid financial ground, and ultimately to end poverty in our city in a generation. The dream of home ownership is one of so many of us that we share, that too few of our low-income families are able to obtain. And even then, for the few that do, one bill, one mistake can mean the difference between staying afloat and becoming entangled in a spiraling web of debt that prices them out of their homes, their dreams, and their future. I know what it's like growing up in a financially challenging circumstances. Both my mother and my father worked multiple jobs to keep the lights on and food on the table. And I can still remember the sense of worry they felt every single day about being able to afford the basics for myself and my siblings. And how when we were fortunate enough to actually move into a house and have a mortgage, those worries actually only increased. It's those stories and those experiences that bring us here today. Stories that have been told and retold for decades by thousands of Chicagoans who have grappled with the worry and the crushing debt and the dreams denied because of a wrong bill or one misstep. Worry that forces them to choose between keeping the water running or paying for electricity or gas or food. That's the people that we want to help today. Here in Chicago, our values don't include sending families into the endless cycle of poverty just because they miss a payment. Because in the second city, we believe in second chances. And at the beginning of this administration, we made it a priority to put a moratorium on residential water shutoffs due to inability to pay. And today, I am extremely proud to formally announce that we are taking the next step in that effort and launching Chicago's Utility Billing Relief Program, which will bring long overdue assistance to families that are trying to make ends meet by giving them a chance to stay on top of their debt and to build a path to their financial future. Once you enroll in this program, your water and sewer bills will be cut by 50%, creating much needed space in tight budgets. Not only will you get relief on payments moving forward, you'll also have the opportunity to have your debt forgiven if you make all of your payments for 1 year in the program. And for any households not eligible for the program, you will still be able to establish a payment plan with the city. Again, I want to thank Harold and his entire team at CEDA. It was CEDA's Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, which helped build the foundation for our utility billing relief program by identifying households for the program's pilot that launched softly back in April. And we are continuing to use their extensive network of partner organizations to conduct outreach and enroll homeowners. Every person, no matter their circumstances, deserves to have their basic needs met. And that includes clean water, nutritious food, and a roof over their head. And let me say this again, as I've said before, water is a basic human right. For far too many families in Chicago, securing these basic needs can be a struggle that takes generations to safely obtain. The Utility Billing Relief Program is one more step, but a big one, in giving families a better chance at upward mobility and stability, and a life that doesn't force a choice between paying a bill and putting food on the table. Right now, nearly 8,000 households in our city have been automatically identified and mailed applications based upon using CEDA's program. All that's needed is to sign the document and return it. So if you got one of those documents in the mail, please avail yourself of this program. Already over 3,000 households have taken advantage, leading to a total of $2.9 million being set aside, making for an average of nearly $900 per customer. 64% of which are seniors. 76% are women-led households, with 65% are Black and 22% Latinx, and covering 47 of our 50 wards. So you can see how widespread and also how needed this program is. Families can also check if they're able to apply right now by visiting the city's website, chicago.gov/UBR. That's chicago.gov/UBR. Or by calling our Department of Finance at 312-744-4426. That's 312-744-4426. Or simply call 311 and ask about the utility billing program. Make no mistake, all Chicagoans bear the burden of utilities at one point or another. But not all Chicagoans should have to worry that a single bill will be the difference between whether or not they eat, whether or not they stay in their home, or go into the dark. When a deck is stacked against families, our whole city suffers. It's absolutely critical that we help thousands of our families escape the crippling cycle of debt. We can no longer afford to hold back their potential or ours. And this announcement today builds on the work that began a year ago with our fines and fees program, our Invest Southwest initiative, our investments in affordable housing, education, youth programming, and so much more. This is how we build a healthy, strong, and vibrant Chicago that deals everybody in. This is what equity and inclusion looks like. And now it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Rice to come to the podium to say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I begin my comments, I want to thank Mayor Lightfoot for her sobering comments, and I want you to understand that CEDA stands with you, but we don't only just stand. Standing is not enough. It's almost like driving a parked car. And so we want to mobilize with you.
Right.
So thank you for your comments. Good afternoon. My name is Harold Rice, President and CEO of CEDA, and we are extremely excited to be a partner for the Utility Billing Relief Program. And I want to, again, give my heartfelt thanks to our mayor, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, and her vision for a Chicago that supports its residents and ensures that basic human rights are met, such as water. Our organization, CEDA, is partnering with the city to ensure high-quality services are delivered to the residents. We are leveraging over 50 years of operations, education, and engagement to local residents. Many of you know us through the other programs, but I specifically want to talk about our LIHEAP program that we administered throughout the city and all of Cook County. Because income eligibility for this program is tied to LIHEAP, the household income, which is currently set at 150% of the poverty guideline, and it will be increased to 200% of the federal poverty guideline on July 27th, which will allow more individuals and their families the opportunity to apply and receive the support that they need through this program. You will hear a little bit later about the details of this program from Reshma, Soni. Please be sure to visit CEDA's website at www.ceda.org to stay tuned for more updates. And remember, CEDA offers a wide range of services. If you have received our services before, or you are recently unemployed or facing a pay decrease, we have you, and we're here for you. In addition to the Utility Billing Relief Program and the LIHEAP program, you can connect with our other programs such as WIC, home housing, home weatherization services, and others. Given these unprecedented times of the COVID-19 pandemic, the economic crisis, reduced racial unrest, and the violence in the streets, we are committed to working together to reduce poverty, revitalize low-income communities and empower residents, our neighbors, loved ones, and our friends. At CEDA, we are proud, very proud, to partner with you, Mayor, and to continue to service our community through the Utility Billing Relief Program. Mayor Lightfoot, you are an inspiration in so many ways, and I've been honored to have gotten to know you. And as I heard you say before at your STEP Summit, which is the Solutions Towards Ending Poverty back in February of this year, your comment was, we cannot be as great a city when our neighbors are suffering. We must conquer this in our generation, in our time, and we must start now. On behalf of the hundreds of thousands of individuals CEDA serves, thank you, Mayor Lightfoot. On behalf of CEDA's partners, like Lourdes Rivera, whom you will hear from later, we just thank you. Now, on behalf of all the Chicagoans who support us and believe in us and allow us to be your solution, your answer for ending poverty, thank you. Now let me bring to you Reshma Soni to talk about the details of the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice and Mayor Lightfoot. Mayor, I'm both proud and excited to be standing with you as you've been a champion in reforming the city's historically regressive fines and fees practices. I'm also proud to be joined by Mr. Rice, our valued partner in this effort, as we officially launch Chicago's Utility Billing Relief Program, or UBR. As the mayor stated, the UBR program is another example in our pursuit to find solutions to reform regressive policies that have for far too long disproportionately impacted our most vulnerable residents. We've made progress in lifting the burden of debt borne from antiquated practices that led to income inequalities. The UBR program builds on these efforts, especially now when so many Chicago residents are crushed under the economic strains of the COVID-19 pandemic. The UBR program works to lift people out of debt and gives them a pathway to compliance. First, it will reduce the amount that qualifying households are required to pay for water, sewer, and water sewer tax to a more manageable and affordable amount that's in line with their income level. Enrollees will see a 50% reduction in what they currently pay for water and sewer utility services. For example, a UBR participant whose bill for water, sewer, utility tax, and refuse is $110 every 2 months, or $55 per month, would see their bill reduced to $33 per month after reducing the water, sewer, and utility tax portion by 50%. Low-income homeowners of single-family homes or 2 flats who live on-site and whose name appears on the utility bill are eligible to apply. The homeowner must also meet the income eligibility criteria for the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LAHEAP, which is currently at or below 150% of the federal poverty guidelines. Residents will be asked to present the same income documentation required for LAHEAP eligibility to participate in UBR. When the income threshold for LAHEAP increases to 200% of the federal poverty level on July 27th, the threshold for UBR will also increase. In keeping with the city's Welcoming Cities Ordinance, undocumented residents who are homeowners can apply for UBR. Thus, residency status will not be a barrier to entry. In addition to reducing homeowners' utility charges, the UBR program offers residents debt relief on overdue bills. Those who reach their 1-year enrollment anniversary date and remain current in their payments will have their previous unpaid city utility debt forgiven. We know that by removing the heavy financial burden people feel with excessive debt, we are giving people a fresh start. Importantly, UBR provides a pathway that leads to compliance, since no penalties or debt collection will occur while enrolled in the program. Since April, the city has been engaged in a soft launch of this program by focusing on eligible households determined by matching the city's data with CEDA's data. The soft launch allowed us to begin enrolling customers while ensuring the system functioned as designed with the help of CEDA. Additional outreach to residents expressing interest in the program is now underway as we've expanded intake capacity over the past weeks. Signing up is easy. You can enroll by visiting chicago.gov/UBR and entering your city water bill account number. Again, that's chicago.gov/UBR. You can then either follow a shortcut online process for those who were enrolled in LAHEAP in the past year or connect with CEDA to begin a new application. As the mayor also mentioned, we've mailed out about 8,000 applications to those who are already eligible under LAHEAP. So if you have those forms, please send them back. To learn more, residents should visit chicago.gov/UBR and begin the application process.
And now it's my pleasure to welcome Ms. Rivera to say a few words, please.
Thank you, Mayor Lightfoot. My name is Lourdes Rivera. I'm an energy service technician. I've been working out of St. Luke's Church for 16 years. They've been serving the community for over 20 years for the LAHEAP program. They have other programs in the church. This new program that we have now, the utility relief, the utility billing relief program, it's a great program. I'm getting a lot of calls from everywhere, from north, south, east. So I'm constantly every day. I mean, it's been for a month. I've been getting calls every day. So most of the people that I am taking care of on the phone, because everything is remote. These are people that are unemployed, collecting unemployment. Some are on a fixed income, seniors. Some people are not working at all, can't collect unemployment because they were working and probably getting paid cash. So I'm working with a lot of homeowners. And I mean, I've been helping them. So this program just started. I'm sure we're gonna help many people here in the Chicago, many people, because this program is great. I applied for it myself, and it's gonna help me too. So I just wanna advise everyone out there that needs the help on your water bill. You're a homeowner, you have a single family home or a 2-flat, to give us a call. You could call the 1-800 from CEDA number, I think it's 1-800-571-2332, or you could call the number for the city of Chicago, and I'm sure they're gonna forward the calls to one of the sites that are available to take your calls. Thank you very much. My name is Lourdes, and thank you, Mayor Lightfoot.
Thank you. Thank you. And now we're happy to take your questions.
Good afternoon, Mayor. A number of
Craig.
questions. I know you addressed crime, so let me just knock off a couple of these real quick. You talked about an all-hands-on-deck approach going into the weekend. Mm-hmm. It appears that we had that, and yet we still had, as you noted, 87 shots, 17 murders. What went wrong?
Well, if you look at it day by day, we actually had a pretty good day on Thursday and Friday and Saturday day. Where things really started to take a turn is from about 10 o'clock at night on Saturday into the early morning hours of Sunday. And that's where we saw, I think, huge tragedy. We saw 8 people shot in one incident, and then the number started climbing from there. Look, what we're seeing is these large gatherings are attractions for people who think it's okay to indiscriminately shoot into crowds. We're still kind of dissecting the weekend from a deployment standpoint, but as I said, the thing that gave me some encouragement is that on Sunday we were able to rebound. But 87 people shot is never acceptable. 87 people shot in a week or a month is never acceptable. So we've got to go back and look at what we need to do better. But as I said in my opening remarks, what we're seeing is the manifestations of decades of neglect. I meant what I said when we need to think more aggressively, more creatively, more innovatively about disrupting this pipeline that sees black and brown boys become men on the corners and diverting them into things in their life that are far more productive. We're not going to turn that around in 1 year. We're not going to turn it around completely in multiple years, but that is really where we need to focus the lion's share of our civic resources is on those young men. But before they become people on a corner, it's much more difficult to turn those lives around. We can't give up on them. But I'd like to see us also focus with equal intensity on making sure that black and brown boys don't think that the corner is their only career option.
It was suggested to me by someone I talked to today that some of these agents of chaos was the term used, know that the city is doing more, and so it's almost a cat and mouse game. The more you try to do, they're like rising to the challenge to do what they want to do. Do you believe that is a factor at all?
I don't think that that's so. And there's a tremendous amount of energy and resources from the faith community to community-based organizations to the street outreach workers. People all across the city literally are rising to this moment. But I think what we need to focus on is those very violent offenders. So just as we need to think about disrupting the pipeline that leads young boys to be young men on the corners, we need to think about those people who have a history of violence and are found to be in possession of firearms and creating other acts of violence. There has got to be consequences for them. And you've heard me speak about this before. There's got to be consequences because that's what the law requires. There's also got to be consequences because if those folks who are in those neighborhoods, who people in the neighborhoods know, are able to operate effectively with impunity, what does it say to people who feel victimized in their communities? What does it say to the victims, to the witnesses? What's the likelihood they're going to come forward and report on someone who they still see every single day in their neighborhood? So we've got to lean into our partnerships and collaborations at the state, the county, and the federal level from a law enforcement standpoint, and then we've got to lift up and continue to support those community-based efforts that are bearing fruit, but not quickly enough at times to really see a reduction in the kind of shootings. But let me just say one last thing about this. It is, I think, hard for the average person, and I know hard for me, to think about someone jumping out of a car and just spraying a gun indiscriminately. It's a hard thing to comprehend. I watched the superintendent's press conference earlier today and describing that young officer who was trying to give life support to that 7-year-old child who was bleeding out on the street in front of family members. That should be something that literally enrages us, but spurs us to do more. And I hope someone, somehow, who knows these shooters, pricks their consciousness to think about the havoc and the harm, long-term, that they are creating. We can't normalize this violence.
Let me move on to the other topic that's got a lot of questions from my colleagues, numerous colleagues asking about the travel order. Went into effect today, but how are you going to, what specifics are being taken to enforce it? Are you going to be tracing people coming in from planes? What about those coming in by cars?
So we thought long and hard about this before we put it into place. And obviously, as a city, because of the hard work and sacrifice of so many, we've made significant progress. If you think about where we were in March and where we are now, but we are worried. We're worried about an uptick. And there's still a lot more work to be done. We need to have our young people, the teenagers to the 20-somethings wear these when they go out in public. Remember social distancing, not just for themselves, but for their family members that they're going to go back home to. But what we also see is all around us an explosion in cases. And so in thinking about that, we decided we needed to take some kind of action following examples of what we saw for states on the East Coast that impose these travel bans, if you will, in some instances a couple months ago. Our hope is that we will educate people into compliance and raise the profile of what's happening in these other states. And as I said, we've now got a full communications marketing plan in place at our airports. We're working on the trains. We're going to be doing signage on our highways. This is about educating people into compliance. We're not going to send teams out to cite people with violations. But we want people to think about the fact that if you are traveling to one of these states where you're seeing literally historic numbers of daily counts. I think it was on Saturday, I was watching the news, and I saw that in Florida, in one day, they had almost 12,000 new cases. That's an astonishing number. I was just on a call earlier today with my friend Mayor Turner from Houston. His city is running out of ICU beds. So this crisis all around us is real. And as a city and as the mayor and our public health commissioner, we felt a necessity in taking some additional steps to protect Chicagoans from what's happening all around us.
But to be clear, it sounds like these are more recommendations than there is actual hardcore enforcement.
They're not recommendations, but are we going on planes and saying, hey, you just came from somewhere, you got to do 14 days of quarantine? No. But we are going to continue to raise the consciousness of this message that if you're coming from a place where the cases are exploding, you have an obligation to be conscious of that fact and to protect yourself, but also protect your neighbors in this new locale against the potential spread of the virus.
You talked about illegal guns. Bill Cameron is wondering, should Democrats now campaign for a type of gun control that would eliminate easy access to guns to criminals? And if so, what type of...
Democrats have never stopped doing that.
What type would be most effective now?
Democrats have never not campaigned for universal background checks, elimination of assault rifles, keeping people with a record of violence or mental illness and preventing their ability to get access to firearms. These are core principles of the Democratic Party. We've never stopped.
Is there something that needs to be done differently, though, to win over more people to make legislation like that happening? I think that's what Bill's asking.
I think we've got to elect people who understand the necessity of the moment. And I think we've got to, what will it take? What will it take? We see the violence that's happening here in Chicago and other big cities across the country. We see what's happened with gunmen committing horrible acts of violence in our schools, in our workplaces. What will it take as Americans for us to wake up and recognize that we have to have common sense gun control, period? It's not about violating somebody's Second Amendment rights, but it is about having a consciousness around a public health crisis that is plaguing every part of our society. It's not just urban America. It is everywhere. And if seeing children die, whether it's here, whether it's Parkland, or whether it's elsewhere, seeing people go into businesses and take revenge on former employers and colleagues, what will it take for us to wake up to the danger of gun violence in our country? As Democrats, this is what we stand for. We want to make sure that people can enjoy their Second Amendment rights, but do it safely and not at the expense of the rest of us.
your business, a couple of questions coming in about the business violations. BACA made some fines and whatnot over the weekend. Phil Rogers says there was ton citations issued to 5 businesses. Vince Girsoli asking particularly about the boat, the Chicago lakefront cruises. Can you talk specifically about that, and can you also address whether you think it was a good weekend for bars and restaurants? Are you concerned that they're getting the message or not getting the message?
I think they got the message. I think by and large it was a pretty good weekend, but we were out there aggressively doing investigations and follow-up based on complaints that we received. That work really started Thursday night and continued through the weekend. As for the boat, I won't use the term that I used when I heard about it. That was unbelievably irresponsible, and there's going to have to be consequences for them. They had no pretense of social distancing. They had every single person that was on that boat, I think almost 100 people, crammed into the top deck. If you've seen the pictures of it, it's outrageous. I saw it on Saturday evening, and you can be sure that I let off a few colorful words at the stupidity of this boat. And there will be consequences for them.
You mentioned last week that if bars and restaurants don't comply, you'll shut them down immediately. Have you taken steps, or are you going to take steps to shut this boat company down immediately?
Well, we shut them down on Saturday night. The Marine unit brought them back into port. We got everybody off the boat, and there's going to be consequences for them. As I said last week, the time of saying pretty please and won't you and trying to educate, that's over. They chose to do something that was clear violation, that put every single one of those people on that boat at risk. They put their profits over public health, and there's going to be consequences. And I'm going to trust the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, BACP, who was on top of that. They are in conversation with that business, and my views on it are very clear.
My colleague Sarah Schulte at Channel 7 says 25 child care facilities on the south and west sides in Chicago have lost vital city block grants. Some have been forced to shut down. They're asking for your help to demand answers from the DFSS as to why they were defunded. Any help that you can do, or anything that the city can do to help them get their funding back?
So every single group that had either had reduced funding or no funding was notified last October, and we gave them bridge funding to June 30th. And we, meaning the Department of Family and Support Services, worked diligently over all these long months to work with those organizations to help them think about what their business model was, and failing that, to make sure that the young people that they were responsible for had access to other services. Now, some took advantage of those opportunities to help them, some did not.
So it's on them.
Pardon me?
In essence, it's on them.
Well, I'm not going to say it's on them, but obviously there's a finite amount of resources that were available. I think the department did a very good job through the RFP. There were certainly some bumps in the road early on, but they worked diligently over the fall, the winter, the spring, to work with these organizations to put them in the best possible footing. And I don't know that there's more that we can do at this point, given the level of funding and what some of the challenges were with some of these programs.
Last 2 questions, Craig.
I had 3, if I can indulge 3. Sean Lewis of WGN is saying, and I think you touched on this a little, so maybe this will be a quick question. Jay Mulgreedy is calling out on you to declare a mental health emergency in the city and for rapid deployment of new public safety strategy centered around rampant PTSD in Chicago's hardest hit neighborhoods.
We do that. We've done that. We will continue to do that.
Amy Jacobson mentioning that in New York City, they opened their beaches on Memorial Day despite being the epicenter at the time. We're in the middle of a heat wave, she notes. Any idea when you will open the beaches?
We don't see the beaches opening up anytime soon. The challenge with the beaches is that, and with swimming pools, let's just add that in, is that they are rife for congregate gathering and not social distancing. And that's really the biggest challenge, both with the beaches and the swimming pools. Given where we are, which is progress, but we have some concerns. We're not going to take any steps that could tip us over or really tip us backwards. So for now, the beaches and swimming pools will remain closed. I'm mindful of the fact that we're expected to see several days of 90-degree heat this week. As we announced last week, we've got cooling centers that we've opened up. We have cooling buses that are going to be available. We're going to be opening up the splash pools in the parks so that adults and children can get some relief. But I don't see a circumstance yet, because I don't think the public health metrics would allow for it, where we're going to be opening up the beaches or swimming pools.
Last question, Craig.
Final question from Regina Waldrop with the NBC5. President Trump tweeted yesterday, federal government's ready, willing, and able to help the city deal with crime. Your thoughts on that tweet? And
it's a
he
joke.
also...
My thought is it's a joke, but please continue your question.
She followed up and said that the president, in a tweet just a few hours ago, wrote that New York City and Chicago play sanctuary city card where criminals are protected.
So there you go. There you go. It says it all. You know, I said this last week, and I'll say it again. First of all, I'm not gonna jump to every silly thing that the president says, whether it's in general or specifically to Chicago. President Trump is trying to execute on the 1968 strategy of Richard Nixon, and that is to make it seem as if the democratically controlled big cities are rabidly out of control and playing to the fears of a white suburban constituency, white rural constituency, to rally behind him as the law and order president. It's transparently political, and candidly, it's laughable. What we need the president to do is focus on what's really, I think, front and center on the minds of Americans, which is COVID-19 is real. It is real. It is killing people. It is destroying lives. And the lack of leadership, the lack of resources, people aren't fooled. And clearly the polling shows that. I mean, you continue on this failed strategy, and I'm confident that ultimately it will be a failed strategy. He can continue to attack me, can attack other mayors like Muriel Bowser, like Keisha Lance Bottoms, like Jenny Durkin. But here's the difference between us and him. We lead. We get things done. We take care of our residents. It's not always perfect, and it's not always going to be seamless. But we are standing up in the face of some of the most challenging circumstances that any local leader has ever faced, probably in the history of our country, and certainly in the last 50 years. And we are leading. We expect the president to do the same. But we've come to realize that this man is incapable of doing that. So this won't be the last time between now and Election Day in November that the president's going to tweet something, say something, do something that is nasty and derogatory and unhelpful. If he really genuinely wanted to help, I got a long list. I recited it last Monday. It starts with stop attacking and villainizing and demonizing us. That isn't helpful. Start trying to be a unifier, not a divider. Why don't you send us some resources to help us fight this fight on COVID, and stop trying to take resources away from us because we are a sanctuary city. Stop trying to demonize our immigrant and refugee communities. Stop attacking the LGBTQ plus community. How about sending some resources for affordable housing? Help us fight the poverty in our cities. And that infrastructure bill that you ran on and you promised that has never materialized again. And how about supporting the HEROES Act so we can actually get resources into our cities, not just ones 500,000 and above, but every municipality across the country, whether red or blue or purple or anything in between. There's lots of things that he could do to lead and to really help us in this time of need if he truly wanted to. Leadership isn't a tweet. Leadership isn't doing stupid things like rallies in places where the COVID-19 cases are exploding. That's not leadership. That's foolishness. That's feeding your own ego at the expense of people's lives.
What can he do to help with the illegal guns? You mentioned that as a big deal.
Well, he could help support the passage of common sense gun control. We need universal background checks. We need an elimination of assault rifles. No one should be able to go over to the border in Indiana and get military-grade weapons and bring them back to the streets of Chicago so that they kill our children. That's something he could do. But he does not have the strength of character to recognize the public health crisis that gun violence presents. He'd rather pander to a shrinking base. That's Donald Trump. That's not leadership. That's why we need Joe Biden in November.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mayor. Thank you, Craig.